Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Doles. This is Big Game Bound. Week 4 of the National Football League begins tonight with the Eagles and the Packers, and this is a crucial game for Philly. They're in danger of falling to 1-3. Let's take a look at the rundown for this week's show. The big shout-outs will let you know who wins the NFL Players of the Week. What the Halleck, Ty Halleck comes in, and he'll help us break down the big game between the Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll call on our correspondents from Buffalo and from New England to talk about the battle of unbeatens between the Bills and the Patriots. And Bob Harris, football diehard, breaks down some of the big decisions, help you make those to fill out your fantasy football rosters. Let's start with our big shout-outs. These are your players of the week for week 3. Giants rookie Daniel Jones, the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. What a debut. Throws for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns and rushed for 2 more, led the Giants to a comeback win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in his first NFL start. The NFC Defensive Player of the Week is Green Bay linebacker Preston Wilson. All he did was sack Joe Flacco 3 times and force a fumble in the Packers' win over Denver. The AFC Defensive Player of the Week, veteran defensive lineman Calais Campbell of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 3 sacks in the Jags win over Tennessee. Marcus Mariota sacked 9 times in that game. And the AFC Offensive Player of the Week is Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson. He completed better than 73% of his passes, threw for 351 yards and 3 touchdowns in Houston's win over the Chargers. Now, when the schedule came out and I look at week 4, there are 2 games I did not circle as games I expected to be big matchups. Kansas City at Detroit and New England at Buffalo. But those are the 2 games we're going to feature on Big Game Bound this week. So what the Halleck, will start with the Lions and the Chiefs, and for that we call on former Detroit Lion, Chicago Bear, Jacksonville Jaguar Ty Halleck to break this one down. They've already beaten the Eagles on the road. They beat the Chargers at home. Are we to believe these Lions are this good?
Well, I don't know what this good means. I mean, it's good to be undefeated after 3 games, but you're 2-0-1, and in one of those games against the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, look, you gave up a lot of points in the fourth quarter and ended up with a tie. So I think they're pretty good. I think the one problem that these guys have is the running game. Kerryon Johnson this last weekend against Philadelphia, which was a good game, good team, and a good road win, was 1.8 yards per carry. 20 carries, not a lot of yards, and they got to figure out a way and figure out the recipe to run the ball. Bevel, the offensive coordinator, is committed to the run. They're going to need to be, particularly this weekend, when you play somebody like the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to get Patrick Mahomes and that team off. A good way to do it is to run the football. So the Detroit Lions have got some things to figure out. And I think defensive line-wise, guys like Trey Flowers are going to have to step up and create some chaos. That's what they were brought in for. That's what they were paid for. I think that's the recipe for them if they're going to continue this good trend.
Yeah, they got a little more from him against the Eagles. The Lions secondary has been getting a lot of praise, but right now Darius Slay pulled the hamstring last game, had to leave. Not sure we'll see him on the field. How big of a loss is that if Slay can't play?
Well, I think it's huge just because, you know, Patrick Mahomes has so many different guys to go to. He's got a good tight end, good receivers, they got solid running backs, and he delivers the ball in so many creative ways, not only on the plays that are designed and run well, it's the broken play. And guys like Slay help defend those type of plays because they're athletic and they're with those guys. Guys like Justin Coleman and Rashawn Melvin are going to have to step up if they're called to duty because he's not able to go. But the Kansas City Chiefs has hit you so many ways. Any of your top players being out, particularly in the secondary, when the Chiefs are number 1 in passing, 392 yards, number 2 in total yards, and number 3 in points scored, almost 34 points, you know, early in the season, that's a tough task to be out with one of your top defensive backs.
Yeah, it's only year number 2 as Mahomes and a starter. And he's just doing stuff that's just, he's so fun to watch. It's unbelievable. Who does he remind you of?
Well, he's an amazing talent. He does so many things well. I think he's very smart. I think he's very accurate. I think he's very creative. And one of the best parts about him is he kind of deductively gets to the open guy when plays are broken. And that's a hard thing to do, moving in transition with 22 bodies flying around on the football field. If you're going to compare him to anybody, which I don't like doing that necessarily, but if you're going to compare him to somebody in today's football, I think he's a more athletic and maybe even a better arm than Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers, who I think is one of the all-time greats. And when you watch what he does on the football field, he makes it look so easy. But Patrick Mahomes in his early stages remind me a lot of him, but perhaps maybe a little bit more athletic in his delivery and ability to move the pocket, etc. But this is the guys that are saying that he's a Hall of Famer, he is. I mean, he's going to be that, and he's going to continue to do well. And with Andy Reid's tutelage, Eric Bieniemy, who brings that West Coast mentality and offense, quick passing game, all that stuff, I think he's just going to continue to get better.
All right, your top 5 this week. Ty's top 5.
My top 5, I took the Rams, and I had them up quite a bit last week. I slid them down to number 5. The Green Bay Packers, I slide into number 4, and I think a lot of that has to do with Aaron Rodgers. The Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, to me, is playing unbelievable. Kellen Moore and his offense, what he's doing right now, is absolutely incredible. It certainly helps to have Zeke back at running back. The Kansas City Chiefs, who the Lions will play this weekend, I think are number 2, led by their quarterback, but I also think they seem to be pretty balanced at this point. And then, again, the head of the class, the New England Patriots, I think they'll continue their trend. It's exciting, but it's fun to see how much it's shifting week to week based on how some of these teams are doing. Don't lose sight of 5, from 5 to 10. There's a lot of teams here that are doing some pretty good stuff here early in the season.
Another big matchup in week 4 is the battle of unbeatens in the AFC East, the Patriots and Bills in Buffalo. Both teams are 3-0. Bills have been in some battles. The Patriots have absolutely crushed all 3 of their opponents. To help break down this game, we call it our Big Game Bound reporters. Covering the Patriots is Maury Hirsch-Gordon, and Josh Reed joins us from Buffalo. Josh, we'll start with you. How fired up is Bills Nation about this 3-0 start?
Oh, they're very excited. The Bills fans, haven't seen 3-0 since 2011, so it's been a while, but I would call it cautious optimism at the same time because they know that the 3 wins have been against the Giants, the Jets, and the Bengals, 3 teams that, frankly, aren't very good. But they knew going into the season that if they wanted to be in a playoff push towards the end of the year, that they had to beat those 3 teams, that they needed to be headed in to this Patriots contest with a 3-0 record, sets themselves up pretty nicely for this Patriots game. But, yeah, the fan base here is very excited, and you can tell all you got to do is jump on StubHub or any place, Ticketmaster, any place, and look up the cost of these prices of the tickets. They are through the roof. The fan base pretty pumped up here in Buffalo.
Yeah, you mentioned 3 winless opponents. Does it feel like fool's gold here, or are they for real?
Well, I mean, if you look at the final scores, they're a little closer than the game actually was. These were blowouts. The Bills were in control of these games for 90% of the games. They come out in the first half, except for that week 1 win against the Jets. They came out in the first half and really dominated this last week against the Bengals. They didn't allow the Bengals to get a first down until there were 2 minutes left in the first half. So, they played really well. And then for some reason, they get bogged down in the third quarter. But all in all, I don't think it's fool's gold. I think they're a much better team than we've seen in the past. And they're a much better team than the Patriots have encountered in the past.
Yeah, let's talk Patriots now. Maury, you join us here. And they've had some issues in previous seasons getting out of the gate, but they're just punishing teams right now. How good are these guys?
Yeah, I think the Patriots are the real deal. They're for real here in 2019. Similar to the Bills, obviously they've controlled the pace of play for much of the first 3 games of the year. They had the opening night win against the Steelers, and then they've dismantled the Dolphins and the Jets in week 2 and week 3. I think the big thing for the Patriots is this defense looks kind of what it looked like back in the early part of this dynasty in 2002, 3, 4, and 5. This is a defense that is yet to allow a receiving or a passing touchdown, and it's the first defense in the modern Super Bowl era to do so. So I think, this team, obviously led by Tom Brady offensively, still hangs its hat on a defense and a special teams that plays well.
All right, so Antonio Brown, he comes, he goes. How is it that the Patriots can bring in a guy like that, and it really doesn't seem to be a distraction like it was with the Raiders or in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Jack, they've had so much practice at this, bringing guys in to their team, into the locker room in years past. You look up and down the lines of the likes like Corey Dillon and Albert Haynesworth, even a guy like Randy Moss. It has all worked out. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for Antonio Brown here with the Patriots, but they're able to, put that aside and focus on football. Another big thing that really helps is winning football games. So as long as they can win, that kind of brushes distractions off to the side, and they're allowed to focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, winning cures a lot of ills, doesn't it? Josh, back to you. In Buffalo, the Patriots have won 17 of the last 20 regular season meetings against the Bills. How do they overcome that mental hurdle?
You know, here's an interesting stat for you, though. Since Sean McDermott became the head coach of the Bills, Tom Brady, in those 4 games, in those games that he's faced Sean McDermott, no, he was injured for one of them, but in those games that he's faced McDermott's defenses, 3 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. So Sean McDermott has found a way to contain Tom Brady in that, of course, lethal Patriots offense. So it's kind of a good chess match that we're going to see coming up on Sunday. But as was just mentioned, you know, that Patriots defense is just absolutely ridiculous. In fact, yesterday during his press conference, Sean McDermott was asked about the Patriots defense and their start to this season, and he said, I've never seen anything like that before. And keep in mind, Sean McDermott was on that defensive coaching staff for the Carolina Panthers that went to the Super Bowl years ago. So he's been around some really quality defenses. So I think that says a lot about what he feels and how he feels about the Patriots defense.
Yeah, other side of the ball for the Bills. Has Josh Allen made a believer out of you yet?
Well, he really has. And, you know, it's growth. You know, let's face it, he's made some mistakes that make you go, what are you doing? What are you thinking? But he'll turn around the next play and make a play that, quite frankly, this city hasn't seen a quarterback be able to make since Jim Kelly was playing the position. I mean, he has got arm talent on top of arm talent. I mean, he can roll out, stop, make a defender miss, and just pivot and throw back across his body 40 yards on a rope, down the field, hit a guy in stride between 2 defenders, 50-yard gain. Then the next play he'll try it again, and it'll get intercepted. So there's some good with the bad. He still makes some young quarterback mistakes, but all in all, this is a town and a city and a team that has been starved for quality quarterback play for so long. So you've got to take the good with the bad, because a couple of years ago, Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback, and the knock on him was too conservative. He doesn't go out on a limb. You'll never win big with a guy that's conservative like that. Well, the flip side is Josh Allen. He's not afraid to roll the dice a little bit, and it may lead to some turnovers, but it also leads to big plays. And he has led 4 fourth-quarter comeback wins in just 15 career starts. So you got to remember, here's a guy who hasn't even played 16 games yet. He doesn't even have a full season under his belt. But yes, I'm a big buyer of Josh Allen. I believe that he's a good quarterback, getting better, and a great leader. And quite frankly, that's just as important at that position in the NFL.
Absolutely. He's got a little Brett Favre in him. Maury, Brown's gone. Edelman's banged up. Who's Tom Brady going to throw to this week?
I think we're going to have to see Wednesday and Thursday in practice to see if those two will be on the injury report. Josh Gordon obviously finished the game with that dislocated finger, and I think it's hard to count out Julian Edelman and the warrior that he is. But if both of them can't play, or if they're limited on Sunday in Buffalo, I think all eyes turn to Philip Dorsett. This is a wide receiver that's kind of flown under the radar in the last 2 years since the Patriots traded for him from the Colts. This was a former first-round pick a couple years ago out of Miami. And coming into last Sunday's game against the Jets, he and Tom Brady had connected for 25 straight passes and catches. There was an incomplete pass in the second half of that game against the Jets that actually, if you look back on replay, he caught it. The Patriots, since they were up by so many points, decided not to challenge it. But had they had challenged that pass and catch, it would have been overturned, and we'd be looking at 30 straight receptions for Philip Dorsett. So I think he's the first guy that you have to look at. And then an undrafted free agent, we know how much Bill Belichick and company love those guys here in Foxborough, is Jacoby Myers. He was a wide receiver out of NC State. He flashed in the preseason. He's also had some good showings in his limited time so far. But the undrafted rookie can get up there and he can make a couple grabs.
Yeah, guys, I'm fired up to see this game. Last thing, Josh, Bills fans are known for their crazy tailgates. How wild do you expect this to get on Sunday? And would you advise against or for reinforced tables?
Well, the reinforced tables are going to be a must on every Sunday. But here's the thing. Pre-game, it is what it is. It's going to be crazy every Sunday outside New Era Field. After the game, if the Bills somehow knock off the Patriots, the city may burn. I mean, if they start 4-0 with a win against the Patriots, crazy things will happen. I'll give you quick little story here. Earlier today, I had coffee with a local high school superintendent, and he said that he's a little concerned about how many sick calls he may get Monday morning from some of his teachers if the Bills do pull off the win on Sunday.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll look forward to hearing that report coming soon. Guys, thanks for the information. Josh and Maury, great to enjoy this game. This should be a fun one. Time to help you with your big fantasy football decisions. Bob Harris is the football diehard. Joins us each week to help you make your roster decisions. Bob, first, how many teams do you own in fantasy football?
Jack, I think the correct answer here is too many. So I don't count the best ball leagues where they're set and forget leagues where it's well into the 50-team range. I'm not counting all the mock drafts I do for the various sites. Just leagues where I'm setting lineups, I'm at about 23 this season, which is down a little bit. I'm proud of myself.
How do you find the time?
I don't. I struggle. Honestly, free agency and keeping up with everything is a little bit of a chore. I try to organize, try to play ahead on the waiver wire as much as I can. You know what teams are coming up on buys in the coming weeks, and just try to stay in front of it.
All right, we've got some questions for you. Johnny Agar, a couple of fantasy football questions for you. He says, what in the world do I do with Drew Brees? Do I keep him, trade him, or what?
I think if you're in just a regular 12-team league, one quarterback league, not in some kind of super flex or 2-quarterback league, you can move on. I mean, you'll be able to get back and find another quarterback who will be serviceable. Every week, guys turn up who play reasonably well, it appears. Anyone can play. Kyle Allen can play. So, yeah, don't hit the panic button on Brees. I would go ahead and, there's a tactic that many of us use called streaming quarterbacks, where you just play the free agent waiver wire looking for the best lineup, best matchups every week. That's a viable strategy until you can settle on somebody or until Brees returns, and maybe you'll pick him back up off the waiver wire.
All right, T.J. Hawkinson had that great week 1, been down a little since. He wants to know, should he play Hawkinson against Kansas City?
I think it's a little bit of a reach. It obviously is going to depend on your options. I love that one game. We'll talk about it a little more that he had, but it seems to be every week somebody in Detroit is coming up with a big game. So you're almost playing a little bit of receiver roulette there. He is part of the wheel, so feel free to spin it, but I'd be looking at more reliable options with more reliable workloads. All
right, Kyle is having some issues with running backs right now. Who's out there that can help his team?
Well, guys that are out there, so what we're looking for right now, Jack, is clear paths to workload, right? I mean, that's the best you can hope for, when these guys do something with it. So obvious choice, Wayne Gallman for the New York Giants with Saquon Barkley out, perhaps until week 12, as some have suggested. Rex Burkhead has had a pretty reliable workload. He went into last week's game leading the Patriots in yards from scrimmage, scored the touchdown in this past game against the Jets, so he seems like a viable play to me as well. Darrell Williams in Kansas City seems like Damian Williams still beat up. He got about half the workload. LaShawn McCoy a little beat up. And if you're playing a little bit ahead, Chris Carson starting to have some fumble issues. The Seahawks are being very supportive of him publicly. Privately, they know they have Rashad Penny. I would be making some investments in him just to have him just in case.
All right, Michael has Kittle on a bye. How much of his free agent budget should he spend on Will Dissly?
Now, here's a guy I love, the dismissal. And here's why. Look, he's been playing really well. I think in 5 NFL games he has, or 7 games he has 5 touchdowns. He had his 3rd touchdown of the season this past week. But mostly he's playing Arizona. Week 1, we mentioned it, Hawkinson, 6 catches, 131 yards and a touchdown. Week 2, Mark Andrews for the Ravens had 2 touchdowns on 8 catches. Last week, Greg Olsen had 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cardinals' inability to defend tight ends doesn't go just this season. It goes back to previous seasons, but it's been really prominent this year. I would be spending a fair amount to get a hold of Will Dissly and put him in my lineup.
Okay, Bob Derek has a trade offer. He has Devontae Adams, who was offered Todd Gurley. His running back is Leonard Fournette. His wide receivers are Michael Thomas, Cooks, and Sammy Watkins. He only gets to play 1 running back, 2 flex, and 2 wide receivers.
Look, I think right now, you look at so this is an interesting thing. Early in the season, there's so much volatility, and we tend to hit the panic button. On a guy like Devontae Adams, you look at the trajectory. He's not right now. He's on path for 80 catches. He's a 100-catch guy. I think they're going to figure this out and get him dialed in. Gurley, meanwhile, we know there are issues there. He's only getting I think his snap count is down to 70% this year, which has been 85% in other seasons. So I think he's trending in the wrong way. If I could work out a deal to move Gurley and get Adams, I'd be doing that. But that's the direction I'd want to go on this. It's hard to figure out some of these things early in the season, Jack. I say like September is the new August. Teams aren't working as much in the preseason, so September is super volatile. But some of these tendencies we can see early, the Gurley in particular, if I can get rid of him now, I'm going to get rid of him now.
Really? Okay. All right. He's Bob Harris, footballdiehards.com. If you've got some questions for him coming up for next week, please send them to me at Jack Doles or to Bob at footballdiehards.com, and we'll get those answered for you next week. So that'll wrap up week 4 of Big Game Bound. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right here every Thursday during the NFL season with a new episode streaming at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Big shout outs to Maury Hirschgrove, Josh Reed, Ty Halleck, our producer Spencer Wheelock, and our crew. I'm Jack Doles. Enjoy a great weekend of the National Football League.